Welcome to the initial episode of Paranormal Lens. I'm David Daramiti. We've got a couple of other members of Jott-Nyx Paranormal with us tonight. We got Chad as well, Chad Thomas, and Jamie Widener. Tonight's first initial episode is going to be about Ogopogo, the water cryptid from Lake Okanagan in British Columbia. I am a huge water cryptid fan. I've always been for as long as I can remember. I've had a thing for anything that lived in the water. When I was a kid, forcing my folks to take me to see lakes and lochs that I would swear that I was going to see the Loch Ness Monster or Champ from Lake Champlain, or even as an adult when I was in the Army stationed up in Fort Lewis, Washington, just south of Seattle. We made the trip to Lake Okanagan and stayed in Kelowna, British Columbia. And I spent the weekend gazing out at the lake, looking for, hopefully, Ogopogo. I didn't get to see him, just like I didn't get to see Nessie and Loch Ness. I didn't get to see Champ at Lake Champlain or anywhere else I've ever been. But the possibility was always there. So this has been a passion for me, and it was the easiest project I've had to do thus far. So that's my intro. What do you guys got?
I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about Ogopogo. It's something I didn't know anything about until we started talking about it here as a group. So I'm all ears.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. This is exciting to learn something new. Let's see what we got.
Well, Lake Okanagan is, like I said, in British Columbia. There are a number of towns along the lake that have benefited from the Ogopogo phenomenon, as it were. I again, am familiar with Kelowna and the tourism and everything else that goes on in British Columbia. So we are, if we want to look at the overall map, like if you want to back out to go to British Columbia, to give us an idea of actually where we are. If you see down there on the southern part, you can see Victoria and parts south, and you're into, south of there, you're into Washington State. And then up there into British Columbia. And British Columbia, if you're not familiar with the geography of Canada, British Columbia extends up further, and you end up getting into the Alaska area. Ogopogo has been a legend up there for 150 years. Ogopogo has become synonymous with Lake Okanagan. The sightings have begun as early as being reported in 1872 by Susan Allison, who was one of the first white settlers in British Columbia. So you have to understand that much like our Native Americans, the British Columbia, up in Canada, you have the First Nations people, which are their indigenous people. And so you had the first white settlers that got into there. And of course, not being familiar with their customs, not being able to really effectively communicate, it's very likely that, they were, outsiders to their norms, and we're getting used to it. And I mean, if you can imagine looking out over the lake and seeing something that you can't explain over this gorgeous long lake. So the actual lake itself is, I believe it's 192 square miles. We have a picture and a map.
I'm sorry. There we go.
All right. So we got 100. There's the map of it, and a very picturesque view of the lake as it is. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous area. If you have the means and you have the ability to actually go check it out, go check it out. If you like the outdoors, if you like lake activities and things of that nature, not just Ogopogo, by all means. The Tourism Bureau is robust. There's plenty to do. And if you look at the lake on the left-hand side, you can see that it's very long and very lean. So right there is the link to the tourism for Kelowna. Check them out, give them a look. Looking back at the lake, you can tell the lake is very long, but not very wide. I believe it's, 3 miles across at its widest point. So you can see across it. However, obviously you're looking 3 miles out, things will be, pretty small, pretty distant, pretty quickly. So
135 square miles, David, is the research that we've got on that.
135 square miles. Now, let's compare that to a reference point for the Americans watching this. So you have the smallest of the Great Lakes, which is Lake Erie, up here in the northwestern part of Pennsylvania. And Lake Erie is, I believe, right at
10,000 square miles.
10,000 square miles. So it's 1/10 the size of Lake Erie, and it's really not incredibly deep either, if I remember correctly. So that gives us an idea of the area, and so the waters of Lake Okanagan house this many-humped creature, and like the many-humped water cryptid is a classification of water cryptids that appear to onlookers as having many humps. Very, very literal. Ogopogo is reported to be 40 or 50 feet long, and to have a head like a horse. So, and with green or black, scaly kind of skin. And there's an example. I think this was a postcard from the Tourism Bureau or somebody up there. I don't know if that's an actual sighting or if that's an illustration of Ogopogo, but that's what we're talking about, the many-humped cryptids. Ogopogo is actually unique to other water cryptids. So let's take the history from the beginning. So 1872, Susan Allison has her first sighting. You have sightings from 1872 all the way up to a couple of months ago. All right, so that in 2023. So you're talking 150 years plus now, and more than likely headed off into the future. Some of the more notable sightings, there was a mass sighting in 1926, 30 cars on a beach. A bunch of people reportedly saw something in the water. Now, how do you explain that? Is it a mass delusion, or was there actually something out there? 1926, it wasn't like cameras were real readily available, so nobody has that cell phone photo of it, but that's one of the first famous sightings. There was a 1968 film by Art Folden that showed a large wake moving across the water. It's one of the best videos that has ever been taken of Ogopogo. And in 1978, Bill Stewick, it's a name much like my last name that I'm certain gets mispronounced all the time. Bill Stewick had a very life-changing encounter with Ogopogo. He was driving across one of the suspension bridges that crosses the lake, and he was in the middle of the bridge, and he saw this thing out in the water and had his first experience. He's had multiple experiences with Ogopogo, and he's actually the leading researcher or the leading, librarian on the fact. I'm stumbling across the word that I'm looking for, but he's the one that runs ogopogoquest.com. And he is the leading, foremost expert on it. All you have to do, he has a very unique last name. All you have to do is Google his name, and you'll get interview after interview with multiple news outlets. So he had his run-in with Ogopogo, which changed his life. And there's ogopogoquest.com. Give it, if you're interested in this particular cryptid, give this a look. There's pictures, there's photo accounts, there's personal accounts from both Bill and other witnesses, both, anonymous with you just using initials and full names as well. So other note, he's the man. When it comes to this, Bill is the man, and hopefully one day down the road, we might be able to get in touch with him and get him on to have a conversation with us about Ogopogo. Let's see. In 2018, there was some great camera footage. 3 sightings in 2018. in a 3-week span, and one included what may be the best video of the creature. But when I say the best video of the creature, as with many cryptids, you have just a ton of very blurry, very grainy, because you're not expecting to catch something. You're taking a picture of your wife and kids on the beach, and you look, and there's, a tentacle sticking out of the water, for lack of a better term, or something, in the nature of what we're looking at here. All right, so you can go years between Ogopogo sightings. There haven't been, as far as I can tell, there haven't been any violent encounters between humans and the cryptid. Versus, hearing people running into a Yeti or a Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest, or anywhere else, or the Alba Twitch here in South Central Pennsylvania. So, like I said, Ogopogo has been fantastic for tourism. It's become synonymous with Lake Okanagan, and Ogopogo itself is actually unique to other water cryptids, other than being one of the many humped water cryptids. It's actually protected and listed as an endangered species by Greenpeace. So during the 1980s, for those of you that are old enough to remember, again, I am, because I got caught up in this craze as a kid, when it came to the water cryptids and just Bigfoot and UFOs. And, everybody, of course, everybody wants proof that these things exist. And the Kiwana I believe it was the Kiwana Tourism Bureau, offered $1 million for proof of Ogopogo. Well, Greenpeace stepped in and said, hey, you can't kill it. It's an endangered species. Video, photographs, proof of its existence. You can't capture, kill it. And you certainly can't kill it because it really is one of a kind. It got its name from a song in 1924. That's how long it's had its name. So it went 50 years without just having a name. And then a song was heard in the dance halls of British Columbia, with the refrain or the lyrics. His mother was an earwig, his father was a whale, a little bit of head and hardly any tail, and Ogopogo was his name. So that's where the name came from. Now, the indigenous peoples, and we get into this when you get into many of the water cryptids, the world, and across the country, is the indigenous people are always the first to have interacted with it. So you have, and then I can't pronounce the Stelix tribe, is the First Nation tribe in the area, and they called it Nahaha Ikku, which means the spirit of the lake. So very likely what you have in this case is kind of a miscommunication between the indigenous people of the area and the white settlers. So the white settlers came and saw the indigenous peoples making offerings to the spirit of the lake. So they're making offerings of, many things. But if you imagine being a white settler in that area, completely unfamiliar with what's going on, and seeing them making offerings of meat and such to what they're calling the spirit of the lake, but you're taking it in and interpreting it as offering this meat to keep something malicious, something, at bay. So very likely that kind of a miscommunication and, the settlers, ignorance of the indigenous people's customs have led to, the mysterious creature and the legend that we see today.
David,
so
did that happen a lot?
That's what's that?
Did that happen a lot with some of these other cryptids that we know about? There were miscommunications between the settlers and the native people?
Well, when it comes to, for example, Lake Champlain and Champ, which is one of the other water cryptids that I mentioned. Obviously, the local the Native Americans of the area were educated in the lake, and if there was a creature, etc., there. So and they respected, they would have respected it much like the Steelix would have, were respecting the spirit of this lake. So I would assume, I can't speak because I haven't dug into these that deep in that regard, but you would see a theme running across these encounters and through these cryptid legends.
Okay.
So that's my book report on Ogopogo. Whether it's spirit of the lake, a serpent-like supernatural monster, or like many people believe Nessie is in Loch Ness, an out-of-time dinosaur, or just a misidentification of some debris in the lake, or some of the fauna of the animals that are there. They have rather large otters and other animals that are kind of cute and cuddly, and end up on top of the water and can be misconstrued from a distance. But when you read some of these encounters, there's individuals who are like, look, I looked down into the water and I saw something moving like a snake through the water, had to be 30 or 40 feet long as I watched it with this, reflective green and greenish black skin, and you see some of the pictures that, Bill Stusick, provides, and he probably has the best picture of the head sticking out of the water. It's incredibly interesting.
And that's this picture, right? That you're talking about.
There it is. Yep. That's Bill. That's one of Bill's pictures. And if you look, here it is sticking out of the water. And now the question is, what is it?
Right. Well, as I was sitting here listening to this,
I don't know. I would love to see it.
Yeah, I agree. While I was listening to this, it struck me, and we are looking at, southern British Columbia. Lake Champlain is, if I'm not mistaken, northern New York State, and then on a line across the ocean,
right.
We've got Loch Ness that's kind of in the same, at least in the same climate zone, certainly northern hemisphere. It makes me wonder. I mean, obviously, they're all similar, right? So it could be association, because Nessie is the oldest, perhaps the most known because of the settling of Europe before North America. But, when we look at that, is it something that's the same all across, and it's just some kind of like you said, out of time animal, or something along those lines. But I'm wondering, looking at to do a little more research, I guess, to see if it is a similar climate zone, and perhaps there is something that's sustainable that way. The temperatures, all season are cooler, perhaps. Water temperature stays the same, doesn't really get too warm like it would in the closer to the equator. You don't have the fluctuation in variables. That's curious, and maybe we are onto something. I don't know if anybody's looked at that yet. And it's curious that we don't have a whole lot of water cryptids in South America. In Australia and in the southern hemisphere, the bigger continent areas.
Well, you mentioned that. And number one, I wouldn't get in the water with anything in Australia. Everything in Australia is looking to kill you. You ever see the picture of the kangaroo the kangaroo with its head out of the water? Kangaroos are looking to kill you. I've had my butt whooped by a kangaroo. That's a whole other story for a whole other time. But the everything in Australia is trying to kill you. No offense to anybody in Australia watching, but every animal there is looking to kill you. However, you want to talk about water cryptids. Here's one in New South Wales in Australia. I'm not gonna be able to pronounce the name of the it's probably an Aboriginal name, Mirawela, the Hawkesbury River monster. The Daruk people told European settlers of enormous water serpents inhabiting the Hawkesbury River north of Sydney. The creatures had long necks, large bodies, tails, and were depicted in cave art. So it exists. They exist as far back, to be, depicted in pictograms inside caves. Hundreds of reported sightings over the last 140 years as white settlers, got into the area. Then you have Champ. 1873 was the first sighting. That's when a railroad crew fled in panic after seeing a large serpent come out of the lake. 300 sightings since then. Let's see. There's one in China, the Tianchi monster. That's a lake monster. In July of 2002, about 200 people claimed to have seen it in a mass sighting. Again, the mass sightings intrigue me because is it a mass hysteria? It can't be a mass hallucination. They're seeing something. Right. Here's Nahuelito in Patagonia, Argentina. They're all over. And of course, Loch Ness. So we're strung out all across the world and all across the in all aspects of the globe. Excuse me.
Okay. It's interesting. So in your research on this and your experience and knowledge with water cryptids, are these seasonal sightings? Like I think of lake activity with people being more, warm weather, but is this something that happens, in the sightings that are documented at least all year long? Or is it, because we have higher activities, we see things more like spring, summer, fall, the seasonal weather, we're out there on the water?
Well, if you ask Bill, who again is the expert, he will tell you that there is a specific season for Ogopogo sightings. Oh. I believe it's August through October, which would coincide, if that's the case, if I'm not mistaken. I saw an interview with him today where he specifically said the season where you're most likely to possibly run into the creature. And he had a specific season. I think it was like that fall time, which if you look back at the tourism photographs that Chad had put up a while ago, you could imagine what fall looks like in that part of the world.
Sure.
So that would probably be the most heavily trafficked time for the lake, other than the summer. Summer and the fall. Everybody's getting out wanting to do lake activities. But like fall time there, I'm certain is probably just as robust as tourism in upstate New York.
Okay. I get one more question.
And another.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, well, another piece of another really interesting thing is the statue. We saw the picture last night, and we all had a good laugh about the statue because these divers are pranksters, and so what did they do? They created this big Ogopogo statue and then sunk it in Lake Okanagan. And then if you don't know where it is, could you imagine what it's like to roll up on a statue of a sea monster in the middle of the lake, in a lake where there's rumored to be a sea monster, like something living there. And I showed, there's a very famous picture of another statue like that. There it is. That's the statue in the bottom of Lake Okanagan. Not something I'd want to swim up. I'm an avid swimmer, and I've been scuba certified, et cetera. And, not something I would, there are very few things bigger than me that I would want to run up on underwater, and a statue of this magnitude, it just joins the list.
Yeah, that would shake you up a little bit.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, what are your thoughts? Do you think it's a real or not real?
Well, I have another question, and bear with me because I'm going on a fuzzy memory of a documentary I saw many years ago on Loch Ness, and they were obviously it's a large lake, it's similar the size, stature, but there were connected waterways to act as access to come in and out. And I know Champlain is connected as well. My question, having been on site is, what's the tributaries to this lake that creates what it is? Are there ways for something that could come and go? And where would it go? Is it an outflow to the ocean, with proximity, or is it just a river? How did something that big get there, in the first place? And how could it come and go if it needed to or wanted to?
Right. I think that more so than Loch Ness, because you're right, Loch Ness does have interconnected waterways. And as they send those deep sea submersibles down to actually map the bottom of the loch, you see that it is interconnected with other bodies of water. I honestly believe, and I can't be certain, but I think Lake Okanagan is a glacial lake. I think it's a lake made by a cut that a glacier made into the mountain. I'm not absolutely certain on that, but I think that's what it is. And I also believe there is an island with a cave system, I think, in the middle of the lake. And I believe part of the native legend is that the spirit in the lake existed within that cave and would come in and would be in and out. And Okanagan Lake is a fjord lake, much like the fjords in Norway. And it's been carved out by repeated glaciations. So it is a glacially created lake. And it's not a waterway. It's self-contained. And its maximum depth is 760. So it is deep. It's almost at its deepest point. It is 761 feet deep.
Now, comparing Loch Ness to these other two, it is actually only an area of 21 square miles. So Loch Ness is a lot smaller, but it is fed with other waterways.
Right.
Interesting.
Excuse me.
So, Chad, you ask a good question. What do you think, right?
It's not coffee talk anymore, so I'm having iced tea.
Ooh. Hashtag upgrade. You could have had tea in your coffee before. You never know. But you guys know me. I'm skeptical about stuff. I want to see some proof. I want to be able to touch, taste it, or feel it. Hear it. But this always intrigues me. Like it's plausible that something, even if it's prehistoric that has survived, it's plausible that it could have, given the right food chain, given the right elemental conditions, given the right lack of a predator. It's entirely possible that, and especially if something is truly waterbound, it's not coming out like an amphibian would come out of water and come back in and stuff like that. If it's staying in the water source and has gotten wise to us through the years, I think it's entirely possible. And all of these lakes and all of these sightings could really be realistically true. Like Dave, you said it earlier, there's the videos and the photography, these things are always grainy at best, choppy, shoddy quality, because you're not looking for that thing when it happens, and we've all been guilty of that in investigations. Something's happening, you pull your phone out quick or your camera up quick, and you're probably a second behind what you needed to be at, so you didn't get the whole thing. It's rare that we get that good quality shot, unless it's a still camera that's already in place. So I think it's entirely possible, and I think that's cool about it. I want some proof though, and I like the fact that Bill's out there documenting. There's a fellow at Loch Ness doing the same thing. And I couldn't tell you his name to save my life, but I know that's true because from the documentary I saw, there's a guy that's been living on the edge of the loch for 15 years or so. Every day out there scanning the loch. Sorry. So I want to believe it. I really do. So I think yes.
I think I'm on the same page as you, Jamie.
So there is I wanted to correct myself. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to correct myself. There is one outflow, and that's the Okanagan River. that it does exit into, and the Okanagan River actually flows south into what becomes the Columbia River out into that flows down into Portland. So
Okay.
all the way through into down into that river.
Gotta love the on-the-fly research. So, what I was saying is, I think I tend to agree with Jamie. I definitely want to believe it.
You can stop right there. I'm good with it. Cool. Good night, everybody.
I like the idea that we're getting mass sightings, so there's more than one person seeing it. I would just hope in the future, with the advent of the people carrying phones with cameras all the time, hopefully we can get something more substantial photography wise or video wise or something like that. Because the three of us are all skeptics. We want to believe it, but we also want that hard proof. We want to know that it is there, that we've seen something, that somebody's seen something or has proof of it. That's where I'm at.
Well, this is like paranormal investigations, right? The 99% of the time when nothing happens, and you're just walking around talking to yourself, but then the 1% that it does, that live occurrence that you have some tangibility to, that's what draws you back every time, and it, because it could happen, going out to this lake, or any of the other, water bodies their cryptids at, alleged cryptids at. That's why people go back to them too, as much as it is that they live nearby and they want to enjoy the water. And that's kind of cool too, just to get you back. And I'm sure that they build the tourism around this. Obviously they do at Loch Ness and somewhat in Champlain. I've been in that area a little bit through the years, but it's kind of cool when there is something to say, like the postcards and the placemats and the T-shirts and all that stuff too. You could say you were there at least, and put a little stimulus in the economy and help support the locals as well. It's a place you may never go. And Dave, I love your encouragement for people to get there, because it is a beautiful area by all accounts. The pictures you've shared with us, a little bit of imagery I got to see separately looking this up. It's one of those cool places on the planet you just probably should go to sometime if you can.
Well, on that note, we'll give a shout out to the Tourism Bureau again. Here's their website. Looking for the link. Here's the link for it. So go check them out. If you like to travel, it sounds like it's a beautiful place to go visit. Some other things some other resources that are available. We talked about this one already a little bit. David, what's the, this is the Bill's.
That's Bill Stusik's website. That's ogopogoquest.com.
Okay.
It's the definitive source for this, in my opinion, the definitive source in this regard. But the funny thing is, as you do more research on it, you see reports from the big news outlets, CNN, Fox News, from all sides reporting on this. It's an incredible phenomenon, and I mean, it can be one of those human interest stories, or just like one of those interesting stories to end the news day. But you see it across the gamut of news sources, which is really, really interesting to me.
Okay. And of course, everything these days has a Facebook page. So here's the Ogopogo Facebook page. I'm sure there's many out there, but this is the one that seems to be prominent. So there, if you want to go check that out, there's another
right.
option. Yeah.
And you go take a look at that, and you get to see Ogopogo as it appears in their pop culture of the area. In the it's appeared in ads. There's an Ogopogo brewing company in California, I believe, that uses the cryptid as its symbol, as its not mascot, but on in its sign. You see it, being used in parks where it's a caricature, much like you see here, made friendly for kids. So it's become ingrained and just as much a part of Lake Okanagan as the indigenous peoples and their history are a part of Lake Okanagan. And I want to also point out that when you go to Kiwanis, you go up into this area, embrace the local history, embrace those indigenous peoples' culture and such, because that's how that ends up sustaining itself. And the indigenous people, the First Nations people of Canada, that area there has been, much like the Native Americans, they have their horror stories with how they were treated by the settlers and continue to be. And I have a big past in true crime podcasts and stuff like that. And you see that area right there moving north. There is a phenomenon called the, is it the Highway of Death? I think it's the Highway of Death. And it's just this long branch of, I forget what highway it is, that runs up into Alaska, that there are just disappearances and killings of all these people along it, and most of it's indigenous people, indigenous women specifically. And you see, when you start reading accounts about how the tribal folks don't feel as if the crimes against them are being investigated well enough. So again, that's a kind of a rabbit hole you can go down all of in its own, but it's definitely worth the effort to look at.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely an interesting story.
I'm obviously a big fan, and we got you guys. We got you guys' your opinions on it. So, is there anything else we want to add to the conversation?
Well, what do you think? This is your story, right? So you're the subject matter expert. And I think I know where you're going to go here, but where are you at with this?
I believe that this is likely honestly, in my heart, I believe it's a misinterpretation of what people are seeing. I don't know if there is actually a creature running around out there, but there may be. But in my opinion, from the things that I've seen, I can't explain the pictures, I can't explain the witnesses, and I can't explain the experiences. But as I always do, even with other paranormal phenomenon, I lean toward Occam's razor, where the simplest answer is the answer. And to me, it's more likely a group of otters, causing a wake, or a group of sturgeon causing a wake, than it is like an out of time, plesiosaur, like many people believe Nessie is, etc.
Yeah.
That's where I stand on it. I'm very on the fence.
Okay. Okay. Well, so that's pretty much a wrap on our first.
So with that,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Jamie?
Yeah, I feel good. Thanks for all the digging and the researching and all the work on the backside that got us to this point. It was really cool. I learned something I did not know today.
You never really understand the effort that goes into something like when you're watching something like this, the effort that goes on behind the scenes until you actually go ahead and do it. And this was definitely an education.
Yep.
You mean you just don't show up and wing it? Come on.
No. You know me. I'm gonna be as prepared as possible. So.
Yeah, that's fair.
So with that, we should talk about what's coming up next for us, right?
Right.
Yeah. A little bit of some news.
Yeah, let's jump to what's going on with Jott-Nyx in April. Depending when this airs, April 1st is our public investigation at Booby's Brewery. Then the team is going to take a trip to the Clifton Theater in Huntingdon, Pennsylvania. It's a theater that has been around. They're looking at some financial struggles right now, but it's a haunted theater that's been around for a while. Stay tuned in a couple weeks for some information about that. April 22nd is another public investigation at Booby's Brewery. Then the team again will be going to Burlington Jail Museum in New Jersey. So I'm sure we'll be doing a follow-up on that once you guys get back. I won't be on that trip, but hopefully we'll get some information back for that. For our public investigations, the link is there for getting tickets. It's always a good time. We'd love to have you join us on any of our public investigations. For this group, the Paranormal Lens, we've got some upcoming topics. Jamie's going to cover orbs and what are they. Then after that, I'm going to be covering the Clifton Theater, some background history and the stories of the haunts that are there. And then after that, hopefully we'll have some investigations footage to review or data or something, stories that we experienced. So that's what's coming up.
I want to point out that when you were talking about the Clifton Theater is actually a functioning movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 5 screens, have multiple things playing, so they are actually a functional movie theater. I'm speaking to them tomorrow, and the gentleman or the individual, I don't know if it was a gentleman or not, but the individual that contacted me back said they're contacting me because they do matinees on Wednesdays, and they have to work the matinee, and they're going to call me after they get everybody, after they get everything rolling. So it is an actual functional theater.
Good. I'm looking forward to that one. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, but this one's been on my calendar for probably a year as far as let's get there. And, now that this is finally, it's been booked for a long time. And now that we're finally getting to it, it's like, yes, let's just, it's anticipation. It's like, every time we go out to a new place, it's kind of like Christmas morning, you're trying to get to sleep the night before and, you're just so excited. We go and do these things all night. The next day we're so tired, but it's well spent, always time well spent. And, just to get to experience those new places, that's so cool. So I'm chomping at the bit for this one. I'm excited.
Me too. I'm as excited for this as I was for St. Albans in Radford. But the reason I couldn't sleep the night before had nothing to do with how excited I was.
Was there a trunk sub involved?
No, there was no trunk sub involved, but that hotel I stayed in, man, whew, put some hair on your chest.
Rather have the trunk sub instead. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting area. So
it was.
All right. Anything else? I mean, I think that's about all I have for upcoming stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll update this, of course, as we go along, further in a month or so out. So there's opportunity to get with us at the brewery and or to get an idea where we're going to be going. There are other trips scheduled this summer as well. So places we'll be out to. Maybe a little lull in the middle of the summer because it's it's tourist. It's not tourist season. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it that way. It's vacation season. So some places get booked up pretty quick. But speaking of ways to follow us, we do have a lot of social media outlets. Please like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Jerry and Melissa, which is our founders, Jerry and Melissa Keller. We're on TikTok and we're working for new content there. So some stuff will be coming soon. Obviously, Instagram and YouTube is another outlet to watch this podcast and some other cool stuff that we can put out there. So lots of ways to like and follow. We encourage, the more people who get involved, the more people who know what we're doing and getting the word out to get to experience some paranormal stuff with us. So I think that's all we got. Anything else to wrap up with, guys?
Yeah, come visit. Come investigate with us.
Come visit the brewery.
And if you've got a place you want us to investigate, reach out. Let us know. We'd love to come
Yeah.
look at it.
Absolutely. This is exactly.
Did we give boobies? There we go. Did we give boobies
There we are.
information?
Home sweet home.
Yep. So yeah,
They are very important. Please come visit us come visit the brewery. Come visit us at the brewery.
there we go. There's their website.
There's the web address. We'll make sure we give Sam and the crew there at the brewery because that's our home. That's our home base. And Sam has done a fantastic job recreating the brewery and the Central Hotel back to its glory days, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, this place was happening at the late 1800s, early 1900s. This was the spot. As impactful as public houses are in Europe, this was that kind of a spot in that era. So there was not much else in Mountjoy. Obviously, there wasn't something on every corner as there is today. So, but a good quality product that they were producing and a good social atmosphere to be engaged at. So, and it's a pretty neat place. We're obviously a little fond of it, and a little biased perhaps to say all that, but it is really a neat. It's on the National Historical Register as a historic site, and it is a massive property with all kinds of cool stuff in it. Outside the paranormal, 3 restaurants, a great beer garden in the fair weather months, which are right around the corner. It's just a cool place to hang out. So, in the Mountjoy area or South
The
Central PA.
catacombs.
In the catacombs,
You might find this team researching there. The 3 of us researching there at some point.
I mean, we're at a table at the bar, perhaps, right? But we've been known.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I'd like to say thanks to everybody for watching us. We'll be back hopefully every week as our cadence will go, and with new content each time, more information about Jott-Nyx Paranormal and what we're up to, and where we can engage with you. Drop us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. This is our first time, so be gentle. We're going to get better, I promise, as we figure all the fun stuff out of this. But it's exciting, and we're looking forward to engaging more of the people who follow us and enjoy the paranormal with some great content. So, thank you.
And that is the straight spooky dookie.